Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 41 of our reading of the Harvard Classics. And the Harvard Classics are composed of the Apology, Phaedo, and Credo of Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett, the Golden Sayings of Epictetus, translated by Hastings Crosley, and the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, translated by George Long, edited by Charles W. Eliot, LLD, with introduction and notes. And we're going to go over the copyright information real quick, which is super short. It says it's copyright 1980, 1937, and 1907 by Grolier Enterprises Corporation, manufactured in the United States of America. And we have been reading from M. Aurelius Antoninus. And we have been reading that. And basically, we've been reading about the persecution of the Christians, and we're going to continue here. I believe that we were at the very bottom here. We're going to start off with this bottom paragraph. There is no doubt that the emperor's reflections, or his meditations, as they were generally named, is a genuine work. In the first book, he speaks of himself, his family, and his teachers, and in other books he mentions himself. Suidas notices a work of Antonius in 12 books, which he names the conduct of his own life, and he cites the book under several words in his dictionary, giving the emperor's name, but not the title of the work. There are also passages cited by Suidas from Antonius without mention of the emperor's name. The true title of the work is unknown. Xylander, who published the first edition of this book, Zurich, 1558, 8 volumes, with a Latin version, used a manuscript which contained the 12 books, but it is not known where the manuscript is now. The only other complete manuscript which is known to exist is in the Vatican Library, but it has no title and no inscriptions of the several books. The 11th only has the inscription, which I can't read because it is Greek, marked with an asterisk. The other Vatican manuscripts and the 3 Florentine contain only excerpts from the emperor's book. Okay, the title has been used by all subsequent editors. We cannot tell whether Antonius... we'll go back to the asterisk here. It was in Greek and marked with an asterisk. The other Vatican manuscripts and the 3 Florentine contain only excerpts from the emperor's book. All the titles of the excerpts nearly agree with that which Xylander prefixed in his edition, and there's Greek there I can't read. This title has been used by all subsequent editors. We cannot tell whether Antonius divided his work into books or somebody else did it. If the inscription at the end of the first and second books are genuine, he may have made the division himself. It is plain that the emperor wrote down his thoughts or reflections as the occasions arose, and since they are intended for his own use, it is not improbable conjecture that he left a complete copy behind him, written with his own hand. For it is not likely that so diligent a man would use the labor of a transcriber for such a purpose, and expose his most secret thoughts to any other eye. He may have also intended the book for his son Commodus, who, however, had no taste for his father's philosophy. Some careful hand preserved the precious volume, and a work of Antonius is mentioned by other late writers besides Suidas. Many critics have labored over the text of Antonius. The most complete edition is that by Thomas Gattaker, 1652, 400. The second edition of Gattaker was superintended by George Stanhope, 1697. There is also the edition of 1704. Gattaker made and suggested many good corrections, and he also made a new Latin version, which was not a very good specimen of Latin, but it generally expresses the sense of the original and often better than some of the more recent translations. He added in the margin opposite to each paragraph references to the other parallel passages, and he wrote a commentary, one of the most complete that has been written on any ancient author. This commentary contains the editor's exposition of the more difficult passages and quotations from all the Greek and Roman writers for the illustration of the text. It is a wonderful monument of learning and labor, and certainly no Englishman has yet done anything like it. At the end of his preface, the editor says that he wrote it at Rotherhithe near London in a severe winter, when he was in the 78th year of his age, 1651, a time when Milton, Sheldon, and other great men of the Commonwealth time were living, and the great French scholar Samais or Samasius, with whom Gattaker corresponded and received help from him for his edition of Antonius. The Greek text has also been edited by J. M. Schultz, Leipzig, 1802, and by the learned Greek Adamantius Corais, Paris, 1816. The text of Schultz was published by Tachnitz, 1821. There are English, German, French, Italian, and Spanish translations of M. Antonius, and there may be others. I have not seen all the English translations. There is one by Jeremy Collier, 1702, a most coarse and vulgar copy of the original. The latest French translation by Alexis Purton is the collection of Charpentier is better than Dacier's, which has been honored with an Italian version. Udine, 1772. There is an Italian version, 1675, which I have not seen. It is by a cardinal, a man illustrious in the church, the Cardinal Francis Barberini, the elder nephew of Pope Urban VIII. Occupied the last years of his life in translating into his native language the thoughts of the Roman emperor, in order to diffuse among the faithful the fertilizing and vivifying seeds. He declared the translation to his soul to make it, as he says, in his energetic style, redder than his purple at the sight of the virtues of this Gentile. That was in Puritan's preface. I have made this translation at intervals after having used the book for many years. It is made from the Greek, but I have not always followed one text, and I have occasionally compared other versions with my own. I made this translation for my own use because I found that it was worth the labor, but it may be useful to others also, and therefore I determined to print it, as the original is sometimes very difficult to understand and still more difficult to translate. It is not possible that I have always avoided error, but I believe that I have not often missed the meaning of those who will take the trouble to compare the translation with the original. Should not hastily conclude that I am wrong. If they do not agree with me, some passages do give the meaning, though at first sight they may not appear to do so. And when I differ from the translators, I think that in some places they are wrong, and in some places I am sure that they are. I could have made the language more easy and flowing But but I have preferred a ruder style and as being better suited to express the character of the original, and sometimes the obscurity which may appear in the version is a fair copy of the obscurity of the Greek. I have no, if I have not given the best words for the Greek, I have done the best that I could. And in the text, I have always given the same translation of the same word. The last reflection of the Stoic philosopher that I have observed is the simply is in Simplicius commentary on the Enchiridion, wait a minute, Enchiridion of Epictetus. Sim, Simplicius was not a Christian, and such a man was not likely to be converted at a time when Christianity was grossly corrupted. But he was a really religious man, and he concluded his commentary with a prayer to the deity, which no Christian could improve. From the time of Zeno to Simplicius, a period of about 900 years, the Stoic philosopher formed the character of some of the best and greatest men. Finally, it became extinct, and we hear no more of it till the revival of letters in Italy. Angelo Polizano met with two very inaccurate and incomplete manuscripts of Epictetus' Enchiridion, which he translated into Latin and dedicated to his great patron, Lorenzo de' Medici, in whose collection he had found the book. Um, Polizano's version was printed in the first Bale edition of the Enchiridion, A.D. 1531. Um, Polizano recommends the Enchiridion to Lorenzo as a work well suited to his temper and useful in the difficulties by which he was surrounded. Epictetus and Antonius have had readers ever since they were first printed. The little book of Antonius has been the companion of some great men. Machiavelli's Art of War and Marcus Antonius were the two books which were used when he was a young man by Captain John Smith, and he could not have found two writers better fitted to form and character of a soldier and a man. Smith is almost unknown and forgotten in England, his native country, but not in America, where he saved the young colony of Virginia. He was great in his heroic mind and his deeds in arms, but greater still in the nobleness of his character, for a man's greatness lie not in wealth and station, as the vulgar believe, not yet in his intellectual capacity, which he is often associated with the meanest moral character and most abject servility to those in high places and arrogance to the poor and lowly. But a man's true greatness lies in the consciousness of an honest purpose in life, founded on a just estimate of himself and everything else, on frequent self-examination and a steady obedience to the rule which he knows to be right, without troubling himself, as the emperor says he should not, about what others may think or say, or whether they do or do not do that which he thinks and says and does. And that's going to conclude M. Aurelius Antoninus. Now we're going to start off with The Philosophy of Antonius by George Long, M.A. I believe that means he has a master's degree. Okay, here we go. It's been said that the Stoic philosopher first showed its real value when it passed from Greece to Rome. The doctrines of Zeno and his successors were well suited to the gravity of practical good sense of the Romans. And even in the Republican period, we have an example of a man M. Cato Eutycensus, who lived the life of a Stoic and died consistently with the opinions which he professed. He was a man, says Cicero, who embraced the Stoic philosophy from conviction, not for the purpose of vain discussion, as most did, but in order to make his life comfortable to the Stoic precepts. In the wretched time from the death of Augustus to the murder of Domitian, there was nothing but the Stoic philosophy which could console and support the followers of the old religion under imperial tyranny and amidst universal corruption. There were even then noble minds that could dare to endure, sustained by a good conscience and an elevated idea of the purpose of man's existence. Such was Praetus, Pharisee, Helvidius, Priscus, Cornetus C. Musonis Rufus. Wow, that's a heck of a name. And the poets Perseus and Juvenal, whose energetic language and manly thoughts may be as instructive to us now as they might have been to their contemporaries. Perseus died under Nero's bloody reign, but Juvenal had the good fortune to survive the tyrant Domitian and to see the better times of Nerva, Trajan, and Hadrian. His best precepts are derived from the Stoic school, and they are enforced in his finest verses by the unrivaled vigor of the Latin language. We're going to go back. There are some notes here. I have omitted Seneca, Nero's preceptor. He was, in a sense, a Stoic and has said many good things in a very fine way. There is a judgment of Gellius on Seneca, or rather a statement of which some people thought of his philosophy, and it is not favorable. His writings and his life must be taken together, and I have nothing more to say of him here. The readers will find a notice of Seneca and his philosophy in Seekers After God by the Reverend F.W. Farrer, Macmillan and Company. Ribbeck has labored to prove that those satires which contain philosophical precepts are not the work of the real, but of the false Juvenal, a declamator. Still, the verses exist and were written by someone who was acquainted with the Stoic doctrines. Okay, now next. The two best expounders of the later Stoical philosophy was a Greek slave and a Roman emperor. Epictetus, a Phrygian Greek, who was brought to Rome, we know not how, but he was there the slave and afterwards the free man of an unworthy master. Epaphroditus, by name, himself a free man and a favorite of Nero. Epictetus may have been a hearer of C. Musonius Rufus while he was still a slave, but he could hardly have been a teacher before he was made free. He was one of the philosophers whom Domitian ordered banished from Rome. He retired to Nicopolis in Epirus, and he may have died there. Like other great teachers, he wrote nothing, and we are indebted to his grateful pupil Arrian for what we have of Epictetus' discourses. Arrian wrote 8 books of the discourses of Epictetus, of which only 4 remain, and some fragments. We have also from Arrian's hands the small Enchiridion, or manual of the chief precepts of Epictetus, which, there is a valuable contemporary on the Enchiridion by Simplicius, who lived in the time of the Emperor Justinian. And we have another note here. There is a complete edition of Arrian's Epictetus with a commentary of Simplicius by J. Schweinhauser, 6 volumes from 1799 to 1800. Okay. Now where was that? Okay, got it. Antonius, in his first book, 1.7. Oh, I see. In which he gratefully commemorates his obligations to his teachers, says that he was made acquainted by Junius Rusticus with the discourses of Epictetus, whom he mentions also in other passages. Indeed, the doctrines of Epictetus and Antonius are the same, and Epictetus is the best authority for the explanation of the philosophical language of Antonius and the exposition of his opinions. But the method of the two philosophers is entirely different. Epictetus addressed himself to his hearers as a continuous discourse and in the familiar and simple manner. Antonius wrote down his reflections of his own use only, in short, unconnected paragraphs, which are often obscure. The Stoics made 3 divisions of philosophy: physic, ethic, and logic. These divisions, we are told by Diogenes, were made by Zeno of Citium, the founder of the Stoic sect, and by Chrysippus, but these philosophers placed the 3 divisions in the following order: logic, physic, and ethic. It appears, however, that this division was made before Zeno's time and acknowledged by Plato, as Cicero remarks. Logic is not synonymous with our term logic in the narrower sense of the word. Cleanthes, a Stoic, subdivided the 3 divisions and made 6. Dialectic and rhetoric, comprised in logic, ethic and politic, physic and theology. These divisions were merely for practical use, for all philosophy is one. Even among the early Stoics, logic or dialectic does not occupy the same place as in Plato. It is considered only as an instrument which is to be used for the other divisions of philosophy. An exposition of the earlier Stoic doctrines and of their modifications would require a volume. My object is to explain only the opinions of Antonius, so far as they can be collected from his book. According to the subdivision of Cleanthes' physic and theology go together, or the study of nature of things and the study of the nature of the deity, so far as a man can understand the deity and of his government of the universe. This division or subdivision is not formally adapted by Antonius, for, as already observed, there is no method in his book, but it is virtually contained in it. Cleanthes also connects ethic and politic, or the study of the principles of morals and the study of the constitution of civil society. And undoubtedly he did well in subdividing ethic into 2 parts. Ethic is the narrower sense, and politic. For though the 2 are intimately connected, they are also very distinct, and many questions can only be properly discussed by carefully observing the distinction. Antonius does not treat of politic. His subject is ethic, and ethic is, in its practical application to his own conduct in life as a man and as a governor. His ethic is founded on his doctrines. about man's nature, the universal nature, and the relation of every man to everything else. It is therefore intimately and inseparably connected with physic, or the nature of things, and with theology, or the nature of the deity. He advises us to examine well all the impressions on our minds, and to form a right judgment of them, to make just conclusions, and to inquire into the meanings of words, and so far to apply dialectic. But he has no attempt at any exposition of dialectic, and his philosophy is a substance purely moral and practical. He says constantly, and if it will, and if be possible, on the occasion of every impression on the soul, apply it to the principles of physic and ethic and of dialectic, which is the only which is only another way of telling us to examine the impressions in every possible way. In another passage, he says, to the aids which have been mentioned, let this one still be added. Make for thyself a definition or description of the object which is presented to thee, so as to see distinctly what kind of thing it is in its substance, in its nudity, in its complete entirety, and tell thyself its proper name, and the names of the things of which it has been compounded, and into which it will be resolved. Such an examination implies the use of dialectic, which Antonius accordingly employs as a means towards establishing its physical, theological, and ethical purposes. There are several expositions of the physical, theological, and ethical principles which are contained in the work of Antonius, and more expositions than I have read. Ritter, after explaining the doctrines of Epictetus, treats very briefly and insufficiently those of Antonius, but he refuses to but he refers to a short essay in which the work is done better. There is also an essay on the philosophical principles of M. Aurelius Antoninus by J. M. Schultz, placed at the end of his German translation of Antonius, Schleswig, 1799. With the assistance of these two useful essays and his own diligent study, a man may form a sufficient notion of the principles of Antonius, but he will find it much more difficult to expound them to others. Besides the want of arrangement in the original and the connection among the numerous paragraphs, the corruption of the text and obscurity of the language and of the style, and sometimes perhaps the confusion in the writer's own ideas. Besides all this, there is occasionally an apparent contradiction in the emperor's thoughts, as if his principles were sometimes unsettled, as if doubt sometimes clouded his mind. A man who leads a life of tranquility and reflection, who is not disturbed at home and meddles not with the affairs of the world, may keep his mind at ease and his thoughts in one even course. But such a man has not been tried. Wait. Yeah, okay. Has not been tried. All his ethical philosophy and his passive virtue might turn out to be idle words if he were once exposed to the rude realities of human existence. Fine thoughts and moral dissertations from men who have not worked and suffered may be read, but they will be forgotten. I think that we are out of time. Let me just double check here. I'm going to pick this up at a later time. Let me just check here. Yeah, definitely. I think we've gone over a little bit. Yeah, we have. Anyways, thanks for listening. We have been reading from the Harvard Classics, specifically the philosophies of well, let me just check here. The philosophy of Antonius. Anyways, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, support me in any way. If you want to join the Discord server, all information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great